Part 1, Figurative Language.
So, in the story, one of the first examples of figurative language is when Marlowe makes his way to a city that reminds him of a white sepulcher. And there is where he begins to join the company and go on his journey into the Congo. The sepulchral city can be representative of how death is present in the company and how this is the starting point for Marlowe's journey. So we can assume that as this is the starting point, then Marlowe's current state can eventually move to mirror this deathly state, the sepulcher, over time throughout the story. So in the city, Marlowe is also traveling through the city, and he's in the story, it says that he slipped through one of these cracks, and these cracks throughout the city are kind of showing breaks in not only the city's layout, but also the morality of the company is beginning to break down as they succumb to, going overboard with colonialism. As Marlowe eventually makes his way to the company's building, he enters and sees two women knitting black wool as for a warm pall, and that these two women are also referred to as guarding the door of darkness. So the woman knitting is representative of how people at the company, like Marlowe, who are going into the Congo, how they are going to be descending deeper into insanity, because when the fates knit, they're knitting one's own fate, and as it's black for a warm pall, that's kind of referring to how that's death, and how them descending the Congo is going to lead to death, possibly insanity, and maybe a lack of civility. Now, these women are guarding the door to darkness, and that darkness is the Congo, which will eventually lead to all these things, that darkness.
Oh my.
Part 2, Figurative Language.
In part 2 of Heart of Darkness, we see a lot of symbolism and personification that helps lead to certain themes of light versus darkness and stuff like that. Like in the book, it says that the reaches open before us and closed behind us, as if the forest had stepped leisurely across the water to bar the way for our return. We penetrated deeper and deeper into the heart of darkness. Here, the forest is being personified, as it seems that the forest is stopping them from returning once they enter the forest, and that it closes in behind them. And as the forest is actively moving to keep them in, it's kind of leaning to the idea that the forest itself is its own entity, and that the forest is actively trying to keep them in and lure them into the darkness and keep them in that darkness, and that this corroding darkness is something that you can't really let go of easily. We also see that symbolism in this sentence. It says, we penetrated deeper and deeper into the heart of darkness. The symbolism here is that they're going deeper and deeper into the heart of the unknown, and this unknown can change them in different ways. And the unknown here is known as the forest, but it's also the new cultures that they're coming across and how these cultures can change them and how they might not come back the same from the forest.
Weird trees. I'm Marlowe.
Figurative Language, Part 3. First, we have subversion in the figurative language piece of Part 3. The text says, he suspected there was an ill will towards him on the part of these white men. This is a subversion of the norm in the sense that white is not being used as it usually is to symbolize purity and goodness rather than sinister. This is key to the Oriental view and the fact that we are no longer seeing it just through the perspective of the white gaze, but instead through the overarching idea that white isn't always best. There is a bunch of irony in the text here. We see the quote from Marlowe saying, you knew him best, to Kurtz's intended. This is very clearly irony, as Marlowe says this with the knowledge that, in matter of fact, the intended knew nothing at all about really what Kurtz was doing out in the wilderness.
I love Kurtz so much. He's the best person ever, and I know he loves me, and he's just I know he loves me, and he loves everybody around him. He's just a great guy.
You knew him best.
But yeah, he was really awesome. And
No, I'm
he's
sorry.
just the best guy ever.
Yeah,
so
no, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I love him.
Yeah,
He's great.
me too.